Hi everyone, I'm Allie. Join me in creating these lovely Emma earrings designed by Sheryl here at Potomac Beads. We're using SuperDuos and some Potomac Pearls and crystals. Remember, if you need any materials, go ahead and look below the video in the description to shop with us online. So to begin our Emma earrings, and you can see how different the color can make them appear, whether or not you're doing them in the snowy blue and platinum color, or if you're going in with the moonstone. I have 6mm pearls here, as well as some SuperDuo beads, 11 OC beads, 15 OC beads, and 2mm bicones. Remember, if you need any of those materials, look at the description below the video, and that'll give you a link to the exact material colors and counts and everything. I have some size 6 green dragon thread on a big eye needle, and I am going to string on my first one of my pearls. My thread, I have about a little under 4 feet. That'll get me one piece done with enough comfortable to kind of hold on to. And I'm going to hold my pearl and go to the end of the design here, and I'm going to add one 11 OC bead and sew back down through the pearl, still holding on to that stop bead. Coming back through, then I add another one of my 11 O's and sew back through the pearl the opposite way. So you're going to end up with an 11 OC bead on either side of the pearl. From here, I'm going to take my thread and needle, and I'm going to go through that first 11 OC bead, and then we're going to add 6 seed beads onto this side. So these are going to be my 11 O, and I'm using the Duracoat Galvanized Silver color in the Miyuki brand. And I have 6 on my thread, on my needle, and I'm going to sew into the 11 O on the opposite side. When I sew into the 11 O on the opposite side, I'm going to sew right into it. And then we're going to repeat the same thing on the other side. So going in here, I'm going to make sure that this sits up because we're going to create a nice cohesive unit there. And now 6 more 11 O's go on your needle. So there's 3, 4, 5, and 6. Once those are on, I'm going to the other side and sewing back through the 11 my thread was originally coming out of. As I sew back through there and add those beads, you want to give a nice tight pull on your thread to try to make that so it doesn't have any gaps between the seed beads. I'm going to go back down a little bit further and make sure I go through that center bead and then come on out. What that's going to do again is just kind of tighten up that thread. And at this point now I can let go of that stop bead or that starter thread. From here, we're going to go in and we're going to do peyote stitch. We're going to pick up some 15s, 11, 15, skip over in the next bead. So we're skipping over the next bead and we're going to sew through the following 11. From here then, same thing. We are going to add a 15, 11, 15, skip over the next bead that our thread is coming out of and go through the next one. So peyote stitch is really easy. We're just adding more beads, skipping over one, and adding more beads on top. So again, 15, 11, 15 go on. My thread's currently coming out of that first bead. I'm skipping over the second one, and I'm sewing through the third one. You're going to repeat this the whole way around the design to create almost little points and peaks. Not only is this going to be done on the bottom portion that we're doing first, but we also repeat the same step on the top portion of the earring as well. So I'm going the whole way around here, adding that in. And the 15 O's that I'm using are the newer Miyuki translucents, and this is the translucent lavender 15 O. Going the whole way around here, you want to make sure that you don't miss any beads. Skipping over, getting the next one in, and that you don't accidentally sew through 2. From here then, I have one more set to do, going through the 15, 11, 15, skip over the next seed bead, and you're sewing back into then that first seed bead that your thread was originally coming out of, that you did that first unit. At that same time, I'm going to go ahead and sew through my 15, 11, 15 that I added in first on this first trip around the peyote. So you can see I have these little points here, 7 in total, that go the whole way around the pearl to create that center. Our next step is going to be to add in our SuperDuo beads. I have the Jet AB beads here, and we're going to add them between each one of those little points that we created. Coming out of our 15 C bead, we're going to go into the next 15 11 15 and continue the whole way around the piece. So as we go around the piece, we put one hole of our SuperDuo in, and we're going to skip over to the next grouping again of 15, 11, and then once again sew through the 15. Once you're coming out of those beads, then you add your next one of your SuperDuos. We're going to have a total of 7 SuperDuos, just like we had 7 peaks. We're going to end up with 7 SuperDuos. When you are adding and making sure that you are putting your SuperDuos on, just so you don't get the whole way through the project and then realize that you have a blocked hole, anytime you're using a multi-hole bead, go ahead and make sure that both holes are unblocked and open for use. From here, I'm going to continue around the piece, just adding in one SuperDuo between each one of those sets, coming out of a 15, and then once again sewing into the next 15. So those SuperDuos are going to sit basically right on top of my empty 11, or the 11 that my thread was coming out of as I added those peaks. So I have 3 on, and I have 4 more to go. As I finish up, I want to make sure that once I'm finished and I go through that process, adding in my last SuperDuo bead, I want to continue my thread and needle through the first 15, 11, 15, as well as through that first hole of my SuperDuo bead. When I'm through that first hole of the first SuperDuo bead that I added, I want to reverse the thread so it's coming out through the second hole. You'll see a tiny bit of thread on the side, but honestly with this green thread and my AB beads, you really won't see it at all. From here, we're going to connect on to all of our second holes of our SuperDuos. Super simple. You're going to grab your next pearl, string it on, and sew through the next SuperDuo. The one thing to make sure as you're going around and adding your SuperDuos or your pearls onto your SuperDuos is just that the SuperDuo is facing the correct way and that the thread underneath is not twisted, because it's a tight fit in there. Add on a pearl, sew through the next SuperDuo. I have 2 on, and I have 5 more to go. Sewing through, and then what I want to do when I come back to that first SuperDuo is sew through that SuperDuo, sew through that first pearl, and hang out there and wait. Now that I have my thread coming out through that first pearl, so I went the whole way around, adding in a pearl between each one of my second holes of my SuperDuos, I'm going to add 1 15, 1 crystal, and then 1 15 onto my thread and needle. From here, I'm going to go over to the next pearl. So what we're doing is filling in on top of that SuperDuo just my 15-0, 2mm pearl, 15-0 onto the next one of my pearls. So you're not going through the SuperDuo at all, you're just adding the crystals between the pearls. And on each side of those crystals is going to be 1 15-0 seed bead. You can see how that's going to sit right on top. We have a total always of 7 to do in this earring design because it is based on a count of 7. So everything we do, basically, we're doing 7 times. Going around and adding. 2 more to add. And then we have 1 more final pass around to do the bottom section here of our earrings. One thing that I always like to point out is to comment below, especially if you do this, but you have the opportunity here to go in and create a design based on this, using it as a component rather than just thinking of it as one single earring. So this could be done and linked together as a beautiful bracelet as well. From here, after I'm coming back out through my first pearl, I want you to step up. To step up, I want you to go through the first 15-0 seed bead and then come on out through my first 2mm bicone. Coming out through that first 2mm bicone now, we're going to create these little arches that go around the piece. To create the little arches around the piece here, I want you to pick up 1 15, then you're going to pick up 5 of your 11-0 seed beads, followed by 1 15. So that's your count, 7 beads, 115, 5 11s, 115, and you're sewing right over to the next 2mm crystal. You can see how that just creates an arch right over the side of that 6mm pearl. Here again, the next one I picked up 115, 5 11s, 115, once again through the next 2mm crystal. So very simple, very easy as you go the whole way around that outer edge. I'm going to continue to add my seed beads around, and then I'll show you how we're going to knot this one off and get ready to create our top portion, which is how we're going to connect the two together. As you're adding on your last arch going over that 6mm bead, you're then going to get ready to finish off this portion of the component. So all I need to do is get my thread and needle back to that starter thread so I can tie them off. I'm going to turn here and look and see where I can go in my thread that I can go in and have no extra thread showing. So I'm going down next to the 15 after the 2mm. Then I'm going to go down through my SuperDuo. That sits next. Then I'm going to reverse the thread through the first hole of the SuperDuo. And then I'm going to go in and say, all right, now from there, I went into my 15-0s and my 11, and I'm going to see how I can scoot down into my 11-0 seed bead. So I'm just working backwards from step number 1 down after I go through the second 15 in here. I'm going to go through the 11. Then from that 11, I'm going to look at the 11s from that center row of my 14 beads, going the whole way around that center row of my 14 beads till I can get my thread end to go through a pearl. That's not noticeable, so I'll see where that pearl starts. My thread going around there. And then simply take my thread end through the hole in the pearl till I get to the other side. I still have enough thread on my needle to go in and create the top portion. And I'm just going to take my thread ends here and simply tie them together. Right over left, left over right. Going in then with my thread zapper, my thread burner, and simply burning those edges down to finish off this first component. From here then, I'm going to go in and get ready to do my second component. And when I do my second component, I'm going to go in and create based on the same count. So the first thing we're going to do is our 1 pearl and our bead through, 6 on each side, and then do our peyote stitch to create our little peaks. Remember, with the YouTube video, you can always rewind to that step of the center to get back to the beginning of the design if you need that refresher. To create the top of our component for our earrings, once you're done with that little series of the peyote stitch, creating those little 7 peaks after the original design, still with the 15, 11, 15 around the peyote stitch, instead of coming out through the 15-0 and adding the SuperDuos, you want to come out through your first 11-0, and we're going to add crystals. So we're going to add a 15, 2mm 15, and then we're going to sew over to the next little peak through our 11-0. Once again, 15, 2, 15, go through the next one, find that next 11-0 peak, and sew through. So you can see instead of the SuperDuo and going through the 15s, we're just hanging out on the top of that group of 3 that we created, adding in the 15 crystal 15. Just like we did on the bottom, we're doing this in a series of 7 because we have 7 of our points. So here as I go around, I have 2 more to add. Going through here. And then back to the start where I have my 15, crystal 15. So back through that 11-0, back through the first 15, and go ahead and just hang out right at the crystal. This again is a super simple, cute component as is and as on its own. What I'm going to do now coming out of that first crystal is grab my wire guard and create my connection point for my ear wire. So coming out of that first crystal that I added, I want you to add one 15-0 seed bead, go up through your wire guard. If you're not using a wire guard, I would suggest a soldered ring. Go down through the other side of the wire guard, grab one more 15, and sew back through that same 2mm crystal. And that'll sit right on the top. We are going to reinforce that going back through 15 wire guard, down through the wire guard, down through the 15, have that wire guard sit right in there, and then once again down through that 2mm bead. From here, we are going to go down to the bottom of that piece and catch on and connect to our previous component. To do so, we are going to sew down through the 15, 11, 15 combo the whole way down towards the bottom of the piece. So you're just going along that outer edge, down through the 15 to 15, through the 11 that connects all of them, and going the whole way down till I'm coming out through the fourth crystal down. So here's the first one, second, third, going through the 15 and the 11 and the 15, and then exiting through the crystal. So my thread here, when I look at it, is exiting through that bottom crystal. That bottom crystal there, one on each side, is what we're going to connect to. And we're going to connect to the crystal from the component, so that way the pearl's at the bottom. If you'd rather crystal be at the bottom, you can switch and connect to the pearl. I like the unit where it looks like a triangle connecting here. Coming out of this 2mm crystal, I want you to grab one 15-0, go down to a 2mm crystal that sits right above one of the SuperDuos. Sew through that 2mm crystal, add one more 15-0, and sew through the fifth 2mm crystal from the fourth side over towards the sixth crystal. And what that's going to do, so we sew through the 2mm crystal, added a 15, through the 2mm crystal on the bottom component, and through, add a 15, and through the next 2mm crystal. We're going to go the whole way around the outer at the top to add in a couple seed beads and then reinforce that point. Add 3 11-0s, and if you don't want that look of the 11-0s between, you can always not do this portion. From here, what I'm going to do is add 3 11-0s, and then I'm going to sew on to that next crystal, or that sixth one in line. From here, 3 more 11s, and sew through crystal number 7. From here, 3 more, and sew through crystal number 1. You can see how those seed beads just act to decorate the sides a little bit. Get a couple more out here, and we're going to continue that process, adding in my 3 11-0s, sewing over to the next 2mm crystal. So ignoring the 15s on the side. 3 more go on, and sew into the next 2mm crystal. So it's repetitive. Everything that we're doing here, we're always repeating. One more time. Those 3 go on. Now I'm right at the bottom of that connection point, and we're going to reinforce it. So I'm through that fourth crystal in line. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to sew through the 15-0 that I added right after it, the 2mm from the piece that I'm connecting to, just through the 2mm on the bottom. That's the only thing from the bottom component that we're connecting to. Up through the 15 that sits before the 2mm on the top portion, and then around into those 11-0s. And that connection at that point is nice and tight and not going anywhere. From here, just like we did on the previous piece, I need to work my needle back in towards the center of the design. So I'm going back in here through the 2, then I'm going to go through the 15 and the 11 that sit next to it, then another 15 going towards the interior 11s, When I go through there, again, I'm looking to connect to that middle 14 beads. And then if you notice that your thread end is going out the back, just take your needle without going through any beads towards the back so you can see where those thread ends meet. My thread needs to go the whole way over here to that starter area. I'm going to continue through those center beads, getting them back to the same spot. And then once your thread ends are in the same location, just like we did on the base one, you're going to go in with your thread burner after tying this into a square knot, right over left, left over right. Nice and simple. From here, I'm going to go in and burn down my extra thread ends here along the back of the design. And I try to make sure for both components, both the bottom and the top, that I am going in and creating that knot and the thread ends to the back of the design. Burn those flush against the project. And then last step, flip them over, grab your ear wire and add it on. When I grab my ear wire, and I'm just using a stainless steel one here, surgical steel, I'm going to open up the ear wire, pulling to the side, putting my earring on, and these earrings are to die for. I really love this design by Sheryl. If you love these Sheryl designs, make sure always to comment below. Tell Sheryl that you love her designs so we see more and more of them. And it's amazing to me looking at the difference between the colors and just really what they look like. One thing to notice is that in Sheryl's design, she used more seed beads to connect between the crystals rather than connecting directly to the crystals. So you can sit it a little further apart if you want them to be two pieces, or line them up together like I did to create one nice piece. Thanks so much for watching this video, and thank you again to the lovely Sheryl for her earring design. They really are kind of a knockout pair, not very heavy, and I can't wait to wear these. Remember, if you do need any of the supplies, look below the video in the description to get the link to shop with us online. You can also put in any switches or any modifications that you made into the comments of the video, while also telling Sheryl what a lovely design this is. So that way, any other beaders that may be watching the Potomac Beaders are happy to learn from others. As always, thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next inspirational video.